Good. Okay, go ahead, Amy.
Good evening. Welcome to our candidates debate tonight. Thank you for coming out. There's so many other things happening tonight, and so I'm glad to see there's so many of you here. I'm Amy Davis, President of the League of Women Voters, Heidi McCutcheon from the Shelton Mason Chamber of Commerce, and Mason Web TV is streaming this live. I'd like to just say a couple words about the League of Women Voters, and what we really would like is to help you get informed decisions. And to that end, we have a site, www.vote411.org. And all you have to do is click in your address, and your candidates will come in. And that way it's going to be easy and convenient and empowering for you all. So on that note, I'd like to turn the night over to Heidi McCutcheon from the Shelton Mason Chamber of Commerce. Welcome to our candidates.
Thank you, Amy. I'll give that to you to hold. So I'd like to thank you all for joining us tonight. Like Amy said, I'm the director of the Shelton Mason County Chamber of Commerce, and we're very happy to be doing this in concert with the League of Women Voters Mason County and with MasonWebTV.com doing the live screening and the media support today. So I'll just go quickly over the format of what we have planned for tonight. Each of our state rep candidates will have 4 questions posed to them. They'll take turns answering the questions first. Then the opponent will have a couple of minutes to respond, and then 1 minute each to wrap things up. We will have a quick rapid-fire question session where they'll just simply show what they oppose or support different things. And then we'll have a 2-minute closing statement from each of our candidates. Upon which we'll have a 5-minute break to reset, and then we'll be ready to go with joining us tonight. County like Amy said, I'm the director of the Shelton Mason County Chamber of Commerce. With that, and we're very Dan Griffey has, by random choice, selected the League of Women Voters Mason County and with MasonWebTV.com. So, Dan, the first question. If elected, what committees would you like to serve on and why? Can you please tell us your top 2?
So I like local government. I think that would be most effectual in helping the local community get government regulations off their back and help them make decisions locally. And transportation or energy would be the next. It's kind of a 50-50.
A couple of minutes to respond.
So energy, because I would really like to see hydroelectric power
wrap things up.
Designated as renewable. I think it's going to help reduce the power costs in rural communities and Washington State. I think it's ridiculous that it's not, and it's time that we make sure that happens.
Okay.
Thank you. Well, I'm on the Education Committee. I'm chair of the Appropriations Committee, and I'm also on Ways and Means Committee. And I would really like to see us combine the Education Committee and the Education Appropriations Committee, and I've had some discussions. I think, like the transportation budget, if we're ever going to get to the point where the education budget is separate and really understands the policies that have been put in place and line up dollars with those policies, maybe get a little farther away from having unfunded mandates, then I think the people who make the decisions about that budget have also got to have a very clear understanding of what the policies are we're putting in place for education. So the committee that I want to be on isn't out there yet, but I've had conversations with people, and I think we might actually be able to do it. So I'll be working.
I think it's ridiculous that it's not, and it's time.
The other committee, I'm actually on 2 other committees that are not the regular hearing committee, and the Joint Legislative Audit and Review Committee is a performance audit and a sunset review auditing committee. I love the work on that, and I actually hope to. I'm on the executive committee, and I hope I would really like to see us combine. But I also would really like to get back on the Veterans and Military Affairs Committee. I was on it for several years. I think, and there are some challenges with that committee, but we've done some really important things to help our veterans, which are also senior issues, which are also health care issues for many people, not just the veterans, but their families, and I think the kids, their grandkids. And it's a very rewarding committee. The people who you serve are so grateful for the time and effort that you put into them. I hope to go back on that Veterans and Military Affairs Committee. So the committee that I want to be on isn't out there yet.
One more minute.
But I've had conversations with people, and I think
so the best way to make sure we have stable funding for education, I think it's ridiculous that it's not. And, it's time
the other committee, I'm actually on two other committees that are not the regular.
Check. So the best way for us to have stable and predictable funding for education is to fund it first.
Review, auditing committee. I love the work on that, and I actually hope to
closer to my mouth.
On the
at a different angle, so it's not at the speaker.
Better? All right. Fund it first. There was a great bill that Representative Haig co-sponsored, which was Fund Education First, which would have established a settled loan or set aside budget for education. That bill died in her committee. It did not come up for a vote. She was chair of that committee, and it should have come up for a vote. The other thing about policies as far as education, we put way too many requirements on our local educators. It's time we deregulate our schools and let our local educators, principals, superintendents determine how to run their schools and quit dictating from the state level. Thank you.
Not just the veterans, but their families. And I think the kids. Well, what we have going on in our school district isn't just from the state level. It's come from the federal level in a huge way, with No Child Left Behind and Race to the Top and all of those things. And now we have Common Core, which is an agreement of the basics that we want our kids to know and be able to do all across this country. So these are mandates that are being handed to our school districts. And I think the Common Core is probably the most important work that they're doing. I think school boards and teachers need to look at those outcomes and really put together a program to make sure the kids have our basics. The other committee, basics is our job one in education in the K-12 system.
Thank you. Kathy, this question's for you first. In tough budget times, there's always proposals to privatize state services, and there's actually three particular questions in this. How specifically do you feel about state support of our state parks, given that the Discover Pass is not bringing in as much money as expected? What about prisons and other services?
Well, the state parks are a huge challenge. As you know, we've done things like have a $5 parking fee, and people didn't like that. And I have to admit, I think this Discovery Pass is it's a terrible mess. I wasn't in on the ground level of putting it together. Having it for just one car or two cars when you may have 3 or 4 cars and members of the family is not working. But I think our parks are important, and finding a way to actually fund them, to keep them safe, to have them patrolled, to have the roads in good shape, to have the bathrooms clean, to have the garbage picked up costs money, just like it costs money to run your house. So we have to find a way, I believe, to fund our parks from the state, and I will continue to work at that. Through tough times, it was really difficult, but I think as we move forward, we should be able to do more with that. I don't believe in privatizing prisons, period. The history that I can see across the country when you privatize prisons is the prisons do everything they can to get more people in because that's how they make their money. And I believe it should be state-run. I think in Mason County we have a prison that is state-run. And yes, can we be more efficient and effective? Yes. But I believe it is the duty of our state to run the institutions. Privatization there are other areas where it might be done, but I think our libraries should be public. I really believe our public hospitals are the right thing to do. And if there is privatization that's really put forward in any way, I want to look at it very, very closely. I think the services we provide from the state and government levels, we do that for the common good, not for profit. And for the most part, I don't like to see privatization of some of those very core services that we provide for the public.
Thank you. Dan?
So when it comes to parks, I think we need to look at doing things and solutions that we used to do in the rural communities. We work with our local groups to help take over a park, help maintain the park. There's lots of community involvement with that. So when we're talking about shortfalls and possible cuts, let's let the community decide if they want to take that park on and maintain it. I think it's a creative way to do it, and it helps build community. When it comes to other things that the state of Washington does, the DOT, Department of Transportation, they do engineering projects over and over and over again. And once they complete the engineering project, they send it to the contractor to engineer it, and the engineer has a bunch of change orders. And it's created an entire industry in Washington state that's making money off of the state of Washington on change orders. The way to fix that is for us to have great engineers at DOT to oversee our projects and come up with a list of needs, like we do in the fire service. When we purchase a fire truck, we have what's called specifications. It'll be 1 through 1,000 in specifications. We send those specifications to our contractors, and we tell them we want them to build a road that matches these. That ends the change orders, and it puts the onus back on the contractor. So these ridiculous change order costs that are incurred on the state of Washington don't happen any longer. I can talk about the Washington State printers would be a good one to privatize, and you know, we're going to have to, information technology, we're going to have to make up our mind if that is going to be a private operation, because it's kind of a hybrid operation right now, but it's looking more along the lines that we really shouldn't waste $340 million building that brand new IT building and just privatize that service to the citizens of the state. Thank you.
Thank you. Kathy, 1 more minute.
So one of the biggest areas that government really spends a lot of money that actually goes back out to the communities is in construction, and I think my opponent has referred to that. I actually, when I was chair of state government, helped to form the Capital Projects Advisory and Review Board. It made us able to kind of change some of the laws so that when you're trying to get a project done, you can hire the contractor and work with them. Everybody involved in the project is working together from the very beginning, and it really cuts down on things like change orders. And that specific committee has contractors, small contractors, it has engineers and architects, it has ports and commissions, and all of them work together and have put together some of the most effective changes in our bidding and contracting laws that really save money, get a project done on time, under budget, and in good quality, a safe quality building.
Thank you. Dan, 1 more minute.
So DOT, a couple examples right now where change orders are just going crazy. The development of our new ferry, we spent way too much money on that brand new ferry, and quite frankly, is we didn't follow the rules that I just said. DOT went and found a plan. They tried to make that plan work as a ferry. Then they sent it to Todd, and Todd said, we build boats and this doesn't work. So we did it backwards. What we have to do is send them a set of specifications, a list. This is what we want the ferry to do. Now build us a ferry that does this and show us plans. It's the way that that government should work. It does work in most other areas of government. Like I said, we do it in the fire service. I know private business does the same thing. When they need a new product, they send to the manufacturer a list of specifications, what that project should do. And DOT should not be designing ferries. That's Todd Shipyard's job. Thank you.
Thank you. Dan, if you'll answer this first for me, you'll have 2 minutes to respond. Do you have a plan for creating family wage private sector jobs in the 35th District? And if so, does this plan involve something more than just getting rid of regulation?
Well, getting rid of regulation or reducing regulations is a key component. So establishing stability and predictability in the business market is key to bringing private capital back to Washington State. Bringing private capital back to Washington State makes for reinvestment, and it gives our businesses a ability to determine when profitability can be established, and that's what most businesses need. The other thing that I would like to see happen is us take control of our growth management in Mason County. Let's suspend growth management at the state level, give it back to our county commissioners so they can help adjust the boundaries. ensuring that we protect the environment and all those other things, ensuring that we have customer and citizen input. But the citizens then would not have to negotiate with the legislative elected body, which is a huge task, and then have it ratified by the other body, and then have it signed by the governor, or even harder yet, go to our regulators and get our regulators to pass something. It's time we say in the rural community, the regulators in Olympia, we don't need you. We can do it locally. We know how to do it. We know best how to manage our properties. We know where our business needs help, where we need the Alliance. Maybe the Alliance just moved a little bit. I can talk about Kellogg's in North Mason. They need a boundary adjustment. And I keep hearing the county commissioners say that, well, we can't adjust those boundaries. Well, let's not allow those jobs to leave. Let's not export our jobs. We can import more jobs by doing those things. Thank you.
Kathy, 2 minutes.
Well, I think as a legislator, there's 148 of us or 46 of us, and there is really no way that one vote can make a huge difference. But I do believe that we've worked very, very hard to create as much stability in government as we possibly can. We've made the hard choices to cut funding for things that were not absolutely necessary, and we've been able to get through cuts in billions to our budget, and yet we've paid our bills, we've kept the safety net in place, we've continued to fund our schools. Schools aren't closing their doors and walking away. We've done what we could to keep us all afloat. And I think business can flourish when they do have predictability and stability. I agree with that. And so as a government entity, our best work is to make sure that we end up writing a budget and providing the services that we say we're going to for the price that we're going to do it. I think another thing and then I find it really helpful, is there are a lot of people who start business and don't know what they're doing, don't realize how much they are going to have to pay in taxes or what their B&O rates are. And I know Chamber has a lot of help with that, and I think government can do more to fund those particular services, so that if somebody has a good idea, I think entrepreneurship is another big way we're going to get out of the problems we're in. But I think those people need to understand before they get into it or get a big investment in something that they know exactly what they're going to have to pay for, what their taxes are going to be, and really understand what kind of profits they're going to have to live on for the next year or two in their life. And then get past 2 years, they have a little bit of luck of making it. So I think government can do something specific in that way and actually help people out. And I know there's a lot of work being done on it. We can probably do more.
Thank you. Dan?
So the government can do a heck of a lot more. Wouldn't it be great if we went to the Secretary of State's office, said, I want to open a business, and somebody shook your hand and said, this is James, he's going to help you through all the paperwork and get you through all the committees. That doesn't happen right now. You have to figure it out on your own. I'll give you an example. A good friend of mine, Chuck Huff, owns Advanced Heating and Cooling. It's a HVAC business. He's got to have a Washington State business license. He's got to have a Labor and Industries electrical permit, which requires a bond. He's got to have a contractor's license, which requires a bond. He's got to have an EPA certification for refrigerant, which is on top of the certification he has to have from the products manufacturer that he sells. And this is just a few. He says his certification has to go on and on and on top of 250 hours per employee certifications that he has to pay. And then on top of that, his labor and industry rates keep going up and up and up. Thank you.
Thank you.
And heating and cooling, electrical, plumbing, all of those things. I'm in the middle of building a house. Believe me, I want those things done right. Done wrong, you can pay the price for a long time. If you don't have good ventilation, you have mold in your house, it's a problem. And you, the consumer, have to have some protections. An example is, I don't know if you heard about the house fire up in Laurelhurst in Seattle this week. Somebody was working on a furnace, blew up, burned down a whole bunch of houses, and hurt the guy that was doing it. So I know, and I'm a veterinarian, believe me, I have to get continued education. I have to have a license. I have to have certification. I had to go back and take a test so that I can certify animals that can be sent out of this state. And yes, it's frustrating, but I know why it's being done. It's to serve the public and protect the public and the services that I give them, and I am willing to do the work and have the certifications and keep my license and do the right thing for the public.
Thank you. Kathy, you'll respond to this one first again. Why should a small business owner vote for you? 2 minutes.
Well, I'm a small business owner. I could tell you how much I pay in taxes and all the licensees and fees, and I think I've already mentioned that. I know what people are going through. My business has been pretty stable, but I was lucky in that a couple of my employees got pregnant at the worst of times and didn't want to work anyway. So I know what a lot of small businesses are doing to try to keep the people that work for you employed. Some of the things that we have done, one would be for businesses. A couple of years ago, we passed a bill that a business could have people working part-time, and we worked out still giving them some money for unemployment, so that even though they weren't making enough money to really live on, they were able to access some unemployment dollars and not lose their homes, not have to quit, leave the country, go find a job someplace else. So there are things that government can do to help people and small businesses especially to get through. Insurance, health insurance. I want my people to be healthy. I don't want them coming in sick. I don't want them putting off, they get bit by a dog. I want them to go to the doctor and get the medicine that they need. And so I want to be sure that my employees have health care. I believe that the new health care laws are going to make it a lot easier, and I know the state is working very hard to create a pool for small businesses to be able to buy into a program that they can get the same kind of advantage as some of the big companies that insure all their employees. So health care is really an important part of being able to have a small business, have healthy people working for you and keeping them healthy while they're working for you.
Thank you. Dan, 2 minutes.
So the work in Seattle that Kathy referred to that caused the fire was not done by a certified owner. And one of the reasons we're seeing an underground community is because our regulatory climate is ridiculous. So you're seeing cottage industry show up. They have to have an ability to pay their employees, and if we price them out of existence, they can't do it any longer. I support true regulatory reform, that we go out and we work with our business owners and our legislators and our regulators to make sure the citizens can stay safe with the product, yet they can still stay in business. I also support reforming the Department of Labor and Industries. We can no longer continue to see labor and industry rates, for example, $19.60 an hour if we're going to put a logger in the field. Somebody cutting down a tree now is $19.60 an hour before you pay them a dime. Labor and Industries right now says we have a net zero increase to labor and industry rates. Well, net zero means we've raised a bunch of rates in the rural communities on construction, on mechanized logging, on those kind of things, but we reduced them in a lot of other areas, so we have a net zero. I will be a true champion, and the folks that know this and put me through a hardcore screening is Association of Washington Business has endorsed me, NFIB has endorsed me, the realtors have endorsed me. The retailers have endorsed me. Washington Restaurant Association has endorsed me. The people that create jobs in Washington State know that I have solutions to help them. So that's the best reason to vote for me. What Washington State is suffering from right now is a lack of jobs, a lack of predictability in our regulatory climate, and a lack of private capital coming back to Washington State. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Kathy?
Well, as a legislator, you have one vote, and you won't be determining the L&I rate. That's not your job. That's not what you do as a legislator. However, as a legislator, a year and a half ago, we made some decisions, and some of them the business community, including Abe WB, asked for in a huge way to not have significant increases across the board in L&I. We made those decisions, and believe me, it caused a lot of strife for people, especially who are in unions, but it is, I believe, the right thing to do. And yes, L&I is high, especially when you have a job that people are very likely to get hurt in or have a record of getting hurt in. But I pay L&I to my employees, and it's a pretty good little rate because they might get bit. And my son, who sits at a desk and pays the taxes and does the books, also pays L&I, and I'm thinking, why would he need that? But we are all in this together, and that's what insurance really does do for us.
Thank you. Dan?
So Kathy's just talking about only one, she only has one vote. Well, you can build a coalition of team members to get behind you in the legislature, and that's your job. I've spent 2 years getting to know the legislators in Olympia, and the best way to get things done is to become very good friends with the people there, take them out to lunch, talk to them, and work through the problems together. And you can be a solution maker when you have a coalition of people behind you. So you go from 1 vote to 30 votes and maybe to enough to pass the legislation. But you can't just say you're a one person. You've got to be willing to step outside the box and do something about it. So I'll be that person. Thank you.
Thanks. We'll move on to State Representative 35th District, Position 2. So Linda, you have been drawn to go first. So same question for you as the first question for Position 1. If elected, what committees would you want to serve on and why? Please tell us your top 2.
Okay, I would like to serve on the Local Government Committee. Obviously, I've been involved in local government here in Mason County. Had the honor to serve the county for the last 7.5 years. And prior to that, I have worked for both counties and cities throughout Washington State. I think that there's a really unusual opportunity going from local government back into the state. Usually you see legislators kind of move into the county commission positions because they're full-time positions and the legislature is not. And almost routinely they sit around the table and say, gosh, I wish I'd understood what this stuff I was voting for would mean on the local level. And I think I have an opportunity to carry forward that conversation, to look for opportunities for local government to partner with the state, because there are some inefficiencies right now. We talked about parks a little while ago, and you see the state running around with a garbage truck to deliver its garbage from the state parks, and at the same time the county has transfer service for disposal as well. You see county crews going up to mow and clip lawns and take care of restrooms, and at the same time you have a parallel group of state employees doing that same kind of work. And I think there are some real efficiencies there. And some of those may be small, but the reality is they add up over time. People are just sick to death of local government saying no more unfunded mandates. But you know what? I think there are a lot of opportunities to solve problems and not create unfunded mandates, but to create real solutions to problems. I'm also interested in the Transportation Committee because I think there are choke points throughout the 35th District that we can address, and it will help us locate more jobs here and bring in industry. And then I also have a strong interest in the Natural Resources Committee.
Thank you. Drew, 2 minutes.
Thank you. I'm going to stand. This chair is killing me. But, good evening, and thank you to the League of Women Voters and the Shelton Chamber of Commerce and Mason Web TV for hosting us tonight. Appreciate the opportunity to be here. No illusions. You go in there being a freshman, not going to get a lot of sway as to what committee you end up on. But if I could be king for a day, I'd be chairman of the Ways and Means Committee, but that's not going to happen. But in all seriousness, I think you got to look at what your background is and also what your district is. And clearly, agriculture and natural resources is a huge part of this district, and I would push very hard to be on that committee to serve this district well. The Transportation Committee, I believe transportation needs to be overhauled, and we need to redefine the Department of Transportation so we can get projects done and make freight mobility and congestion relief define priorities of the Department of Transportation. And education, it's a fundamental part of our state constitution and what our state government is there for. So those would be my choices if given the opportunity, and to work on those. Thank you.
Thanks.
Another minute on transportation. I've served on the Peninsula Regional Transportation Authority for the time I've been on the Mason County Commission, and one of the things that I helped initiate that is a different way of doing business for us was to have our group form a caucus and actually go and meet with all of our legislators every year before the session begins to talk about our priorities. And you know what that is? That's not a partisan process. There's Republicans and Democrats from each of the counties, and there are Republicans and Democrats that represent the peninsula area. But what we do is we go together and talk about what our regional priorities are for transportation and ask our caucus in the legislature to work together, and that's been very effective for us. We don't have all of our projects done yet, but we have full funding for State Route 3 through Belfair, and we do have the Belfair Bypass is still actually a project that's alive, even though all the other loop projects in the state have been actually terminated. So I think that's been effective, and I'd like to continue that work.
Thank you. Drew?
Again, overall, I just like to streamline our state government, and so regardless of what committee it end up being on, we need to have a consistent, understandable, and predictable regulatory and tax environment, and so that'll be my philosophy going forward with any committee I end up being on, so that we can move the state forward, get the economy moving, create jobs, grow the tax base without raising taxes, and therefore the state will have more revenue. If we can go back to pre-recession levels, that's $1 billion stimulus to our economy without changing taxes or fees. So those are my priorities going forward, and the committee to me right now is putting the cart before the horse. I understand why we have the question, but I think it's more important to understand where I'm coming from and my philosophy. Thank you.
Thanks. Drew, we'll ask you this question first. You've both spoken publicly about supporting small business. What specific proposals will you put forward or support when you're elected that will make it easier for small businesses to survive?
Sure. Again, going back to the regulatory environment, we have right now over 400 regulations that were created just last year on the state. Not all of them necessarily related to business, but at the end of the day, they all do, because the overall economy and everything we do affects. It's a domino effect. And I want to have an environment where the regulatory system is not a burden. We have to have responsible and reasonable regulations, of course. But I believe in a sunset provision, and that whether that be 2 years or 18 months or 3 years, we can have that discussion. But the point is, after a certain amount of time, a given regulation needs to expire. If it's really good and it's working, the legislature needs to take it up and enact it as law. I don't think we've ever stopped to look and see what do we have right now and is that working. So streamline that regulation process so that there's a sunset provision and we can start to remove some of the duplicity in the regulatory environment, and also the B&O tax rates. It works well in some industries, such as technology, and it's horrible in other industries, such as in the grocery business, which affects every one of us. That B&O tax is levied at manufacturing, distribution, warehousing, and when you buy that can of soup. And that squeezes that profit margin so much on the grocer that makes it very difficult to make changes in their business. So a streamlined and predictable regulatory and tax environment. And I just go to again, understand if you're not changing the ball constantly or the bar, businesses can plan, they can move forward. We can have the argument where that bar should be, but let's establish it and not keep changing it on businesses.
Thank you. Linda?
Well, I do support things that make sense for all business, and I believe in this state about 70% of new jobs come from small business. One of the things that when you talk to small business owners about moving to a community, they want to know that the schools are good, they want to know that the roads are good, they want to know that there are utilities available. It wasn't exactly a small business, but we lost a very good opportunity for a server farm, a search engine farm, a couple of years ago because we didn't have our water and sewer completely extended out to our urban growth area. So I think that there's a package of services that are very attractive to businesses. A small business that starts here is going to want a workforce that they can develop that's here. And I think we look at what the work of the future will be and how we train, how we support the educational system, both at the K-12 level, but also in the technical and four-year programs that we offer. There are opportunities, I think, to do enterprise zones and incubator kinds of things. Chambers have been involved in that, and I think frequently very successfully. And I would like to provide as much support as we can to those local groups that are doing that kind of activity. I also think it's very important for us to look at there's state regulations and there's local regulations. And if we can kind of get to yes on which set of regulations are going to be the predominant ones, it offers additional opportunities for small businesses to decide to stay in one location and not relocate.
Very good. Drew, 1 minute.
Yeah, so over the past, over the course of this whole campaign, but especially in the last few weeks, between myself and campaign volunteers and campaign staff, we've talked to a lot of businesses. And really what drove this home, going back to the regulatory environment, was a discussion with Taylor Shellfish, one of our largest employers in this area. And I'm just going to pass this down so you know what I'm looking at and bring in any unauthorized notes or anything. But this is a diagram of the number of regulations to get a new shellfish farm. And you can't read it from there. Well, guess what? I can't read it from here. That's how much is on this page. And it's ridiculous between the federal, the state, and the county what you got to do. And was it any wonder why they went and opened a mussel farm in British Columbia? We just lost jobs. We lost out on our economy here. So we need to streamline this regulatory environment. It's killing business. It's killing our economy. And we're not going to move forward until we get a handle on that.
Well, I've not studied this, but a lot of this is on a federal level. And what I would suggest, and what I have been on the record as saying for a long time, is my interest in being on the Natural Resources Committee is that we need policies that make sense. There are some people that say, you know, the solution to everything is to get rid of regulations. Well, some of us lived here when the air was so dirty that our mothers couldn't hang their laundry outside because it got too dirty from the air. And there was a time when all the shellfish in Oakland Bay and our adjacent areas was dead because the pulp mill was running on the waterfront in Shelton. And we have quite a different area right now. And I think that I would not want to see a lack of regulations that would put the shellfish industry out of business. But I also don't want to see regulations that are so onerous that other businesses cannot start up and continue to operate. So I think it's a complex and thoughtful discussion that we need to continue to have.
Thank you. Linda, I'll ask you to answer this question first. With state transportation budgets strapped, it may be 20 years before a Belfair bypass can be realized. Is this acceptable? And if not, what would you propose to improve that timeline?
Well, I think that there's probably already a fair amount of discussion down in Olympia that has happened over the last couple sessions. I have heard tell that there's going to be some sort of proposal for perhaps some type of voter-approved package of projects. I don't know enough about that to feel like I'm well informed on that, but I do know that we have kept the Belfair bypass alive. And that had to do with a lot of good work by our current legislative delegation that went in and made sure that there's now enough money to complete the environmental reviews and I believe the acquisition of the right-of-way. Now, one of the things that I'd like to do to keep the Belfair bypass alive and a whole lot of other local projects that I think are very good is to look at ways that maybe medium-sized governments can do medium-sized projects. Some of our tiny governments can't do any projects, and some of our projects are so big that it really takes the state. But I think throughout the state, and certainly the Belfair bypass is a good example, and so is the reconfiguration of the Johns Prairie intersection, as well as a couple other choke points getting up by the airport in Kitsap County. There are a number of those projects that I think could be engineered through county public works departments and private contractors. Looking at the Belfair bypass, there might be as much as a 40% saving on the construction of that road to do it using that alternative theory. And that gives us the same road, only it has a 10-foot wide bicycle and walking path next to it that it doesn't have with the state look at that project. So I think there are some ways that we can get together and provide opportunities to get some of these built and not just give up because there is X amount of dollars right now.
Drew, 2 minutes.
Well, as I said when we had the question regarding committee assignments, I believe we need to redefine the Department of Transportation because here's reality. Belfair bypass isn't going to happen the way the DOT has its priorities right now. When I first came out here, courtesy of the Navy in 1994, there was the talk of the Belfair bypass. Well, here we are. It's 2012, and we're talking. So it's going to take leadership to get it done. We need to form regional coalitions in the legislature with the surrounding counties, and push this forward. But first and foremost, we need to redefine the DOT and give them defined, measurable goals. They had those in 2000 when a Blue Ribbon Commission was established that gave specific priorities to the DOT, congestion relief, freight mobility, and those were measurable. In 2006, the state Senate had a bill that took away those, and they added in these nice feel-good terms like the movement of people is the priority of the DOT. Well, what does that mean? Subsequently, half the transportation dollars in this state are going towards sound transit that moves less than 3% of the people. Guess what? Belfair Bypass is low on the list. So we need to redefine DOT. I also support ending charging ourselves sales tax on DOT projects. There's an 8.9% inflationary rate on every project right now. So let's get rid of that. I find that ridiculous. Those are some key things that need to happen before we can even begin to move the Belfair Bypass forward. And it's going to take leadership. And I know all four people sitting up here are committed to making that happen. And it's going to take demonstrated leadership, though, to move it forward and working with different coalitions.
Thank you. Linda?
I don't know that I have a whole lot more to add to that. I agree with Drew. I think all of us want to move this project forward. I do think that I have the demonstrated experience and leadership to contribute to that process. I have a lot of years of working in getting approval of projects for local government, both cities and counties in Washington State. I have a lot of experience working with the Transportation Committee in both the House and Senate, and I'd like to have an opportunity to be a member of those committees and continue that work.
Thank you. Drew?
Well, I think it's fundamental to the economic viability of this region, to numerous industries, to get that project done. And when you take a coalition of business leaders in this area that say this is threatening our way of life and our business, I think that has an impact. It better have an impact. And if it doesn't, then we got bigger issues in Olympia. But it's bringing those people together and, again, forming the coalitions with other legislators in the surrounding districts. And you can look at, I believe in Milton, I might be wrong, on Highway 167, I think it is. They have the exact same issue. They've been talking about needing to widen that forever, and it hasn't happened. And meanwhile, what does DOT do in conjunction with the city of Seattle? Tear down the viaduct, build a north-south highway, reduce it by a lane, and what's that doing? Let's get this done, and let's hold them accountable.
Thank you. Drew, I'll have you answer this first. It is a three-part question as well. In tough budget times, there are always proposals to privatize state services. How specifically do you feel about the state support of our state parks, given the Discover Pass is not bringing in as much money as expected? What about prisons or other services?
Okay, so privatizing. On the surface, I'll say this, that if there's something that we can do at the same quality or better at a cheaper price, then that's where it should be. And whether that's within the state or outside of the state government, not outside the state of Washington, outside the state government. There are exceptions to that, and I agree with what Kathy Haig said earlier. I don't support privatizing things like prisons. Public safety, education, protecting the vulnerable, those are key, fundamental items that we need to do as a state. But the park system, that's we need to promote our tourism. We lost our state tourism board through budget cuts. And, you look at companies that survive through hard times, taking private sector experience here. What companies survive and which ones don't in hard times? The ones that usually fail are the ones that cut their marketing because nobody knows they're there anymore. Well, hello, we got rid of our tourism. We don't have people coming in. That's not going to solve overnight the state parks issues. And, again, I believe in working with coalitions there. I answered the prison question. And, I'd go back to what Dan said earlier about the IT department. Beautiful marble building if you've driven by it. Beautiful building. The Kremlin's a beautiful building, too. Doesn't make it good. The IT department charges 6 to 7 times what the private sector can do for IT backup is what they charge the state agencies. Why are we doing it? We need to ask these questions. So I support taking a hard look at these items, and if we can move them to a cheaper private industry, then that's where they need to go, and certainly keeping them within the state of Washington.
Thank you. Linda?
Okay, I never thought about in the whole course of this campaign, I'd never thought about the Kremlin. Thank you for introducing a new element. I got to tell you, I guess what I would say is I think there are some opportunities to privatize. However, I would say that those opportunities need to go first to business people that are people here in Washington State. However, I would also want to emphasize that cheaper isn't always better. I'll start with the prisons. Some of you know I have a background working for the Department of Corrections and I am a retired police officer. And just because it's cheaper doesn't mean it's better, and it doesn't mean that it solves a problem. I used to kind of tongue-in-cheek refer to them as prisons for profit, and the reality is when you take somebody's freedom away from them, you have some obligations to provide for their health care and to provide for their safety, and if you cut the staff down too far, you end up with hellacious lawsuits, which the state actually, I'm feeling really old tonight because I've actually been through prisons for profit. Now this may be the third time I've been through this in various parts of my career. One of the things we found out about prisons for profit is escape from a prison that is not publicly owned is not escape. There's no crime. That's a problem because that person was in there to begin with in the first place. So, are you holding up the stop for me, or are we done with my time? I'm sorry. I also think that I want to be very sensitive on the parks. Thank you. The parks are an important asset that are owned by all the people of the state, and they are for tourism, but they're also something for all of us to enjoy, whether you have a lot of money and can afford to go to a resort or not. I think our parks have some value in terms of how we live and where we live. I do want to look very closely, though, at how cities and counties can partner with the state to reduce costs across the board for everybody involved.
Thank you.
That's the stop.
Drew, 1 minute.
And again, just to clarify, when I started off my comment on this question, I said if we can do it at the same quality level or better. I didn't say at a lower quality level, so I want to clarify that. And when I also say putting it outside of the state, I'm talking about outside the state government, not outside the state of Washington. So I don't support shipping things out of the state. I'm referring to outside of the walls of the state government in that. So I just want to clarify those points. Thank you.
Thank you. Linda. You do. You have one more minute.
That extra stop thing just completely threw me for a loop. Well, I do think that there are opportunities for all of us to look around and see what we can do better and what we can do for partnerships. Every single tax dollar is important, and none of it should be thrown away. It should not be treated frivolously. It is important that we all work across the aisles on looking at how we do services and how we approach our future. The idea that we would take every tax dollar and view it as a real resource and maximize its value doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to be privatizing, but it also doesn't necessarily rule that out. And I just think it's a thoughtful, broad-based approach. A lot of us have said government has to reset itself. These last couple of years have been a shock to those of us who are used to things kind of going down and then things rebounding right away. And we've had to look at new ways to do things in local government. We've done that here in Mason County. It has not been without pain, but it has been moderately successful, and we do have a healthy cash reserve, and I think we can take those lessons to the state.
Thank you. So we just have quick 6 questions for the candidates. You each have a red oppose and a green support. Same side would be red for no and green for yes. You will have still a 2 minutes closing statement, so if you feel that you need to explain any of the answers, then you have that opportunity. So the first question that I ask all 4 candidates to answer, just by indicating your green or red card. Number 1, would you support a tax increase to fund education?
I can explain that.
Number 2, Tim Eyman's initiative 1185 once again asked voters to require a 2/3 vote of the legislature to raise taxes, as did I-601, I-960, and I-1053. Will you vote yes or no? Number 3, would you support a proposal to allow for private competition in Washington State's run workers' compensation system? Number 4, how will you vote on Initiative 502, the marijuana legalization initiative? Number 5, do you support the charter school ballot measure Initiative 1240? And last but not least, will you vote yes or no on Referendum 74, which would allow for same-sex marriage? Thank you. So with that, we'll have your 2-minute closing statements. Random draw first closing statement will go to Linda Ring Erickson. And feel free to stand up if you'd like to.
You want me to stand up? I can stand up. And you go through the referendums and you see the green or the red, and I think that oversimplifies some of the things we're looking at. For example, on the what does it take to raise taxes, the reality is I think it should be the same level to raise taxes as it is to lower them or create a loophole. I am concerned about the fact that you take a 2/3 vote to raise taxes, but it only takes a 50% plus one to create a new loophole. So I think it oversimplifies the question, and I have throughout this campaign made it very clear that I support having the same threshold for both those kinds of decisions, because it's about a thoughtful balance about how we do government and who we allow to have favors, and also where we take our money from, who we tax. So that some of these are a little bit oversimplified. I think 502 is poorly written. That's the marijuana legalization. But the other side of that is local government is spending 72% of its money right now on law enforcement. A lot of that money is going into enforcing minor drug violations and incarcerating people for less than a year on minor drug violations. Are those serious? Yeah, there's a societal problem there. There's a societal issue. But the other side of that is that for the person who is burglarized, who has their car stolen, who needs the assistance of an officer quickly, that is something that I would rather see as a priority. And as somebody who's done that work, I got to tell you, I think that that's about time that we put our priorities in those positions. So as you go through each of these and you see what our little card was one way or the other, don't oversimplify our answers, because I think all of us, and every one of us, all four of us, have given a lot of thought to these various issues over the last few months.
Thank you. Drew, you're next. 2 minutes.
Thank you, and again, thank you for having us tonight, for coming out here and skipping those other low-profile debates and being at this one. Appreciate it. So, I want to take a moment to address the R74 and recognizing gay marriage. As for everybody, it's a deeply personal issue, and for me, it's a matter of my religious faith. I don't look to impose that on other people, but when I'm asked the question, I have to answer it as I believe. And along those lines, whatever the will of the people is, I'm going to respect that. And so if that passes, it passes. You're not going to see anything different from me. That's the way I will vote because of the way I was brought up, and that's not casting a judgment on anybody. So I just want to make that very clear, because that also ties right into the 2/3. It's been passed time and time again, the legislature says, you don't know what you're doing, people. Well, 70% of the people say they do, time and again, that you want it harder to have taxes raised on you. It is time to grow this economy and quit asking for more from the people. And let's just look at education for a minute. It's time to quit holding the students and the teachers hostage. And let's fully fund education first, and let's do that. Since 1970, the state population has doubled. The student population has grown by 30%. Staffing has grown 70%, and that doesn't mean teachers necessarily. We have great teachers in this school district. My sons are in the school district, and they've had wonderful teachers throughout their time here. And it's this time that we empower our local administrators, our local principals, and our local teachers, because it's vital to our economy. And let's get our education system moving forward and have local control and stop the unfunded mandates. I'm going to take my business experience to Olympia, and because of that, every vote I take, I've got to live with as a business owner. And it's time we change the culture in Olympia and grow this economy and get people back to work. I'm asking for your vote. I appreciate your support and for taking the time to be here tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Dan, you're next.
So thank you to the League and to the Chamber for hosting us tonight. It's very fun to come to these. It was hard in the beginning when I ran 2 years ago to stand in front of you without my knees knocking, and now it's getting a little easier. I want to give a little of you who have not met me a little bit about my background. My name is Dan Griffey. I am running for legislature. Those are the easy ones. I'm a professional firefighter by trade and a lifelong resident of the district. I have at least most of my family here. My Two of my daughters and my wife follow me everywhere we go. I've loved this community. And I decided to run for this position because I remember what we were and what we are now. And what we were was a thriving community with real jobs, values, and traditions that had an ability to take care of itself. I decided long ago that spotted owl was a ridiculous reason for pricing us out of the job market, taking away what we do for a living, good, high-paying jobs. I think it was even more ridiculous when we come to find out that it really wasn't logging that caused the demise of the spotted owl. It was the barred owl that was killing the spotted owl. I think it's time we do something real for the middle class. Let's reduce taxes and regulation that we impose on our businesses to very low, long-term predictable levels so we can encourage private capital to come back. It's time that we pass in our Constitution a 2/3 majority requirement to raise taxes as a constitutional amendment. Let's do this because the citizens won't have to spend any more time and effort telling the legislature that it should be hard to raise taxes. I'm a proud patriot of this community, of this district, and I will do everything I can to get government off our backs, allow us to thrive, and allow us to have our rural jobs, values, and traditions like we used to have. Thank you so much. Have a nice day.
Thank you. Kathy?
Okay, well, it has been a long road on this campaign trail, and I do appreciate the interest of the public in staying involved. I do have to say that I got into the legislature because I had worked on a school board for 12 years, and I watched year after year to see what could happen to school districts when you had to have the supermajority. You had to have just 60% to pass a levy. Hood Canal failed the levies twice, and when you fail a levy, you don't get the local money, plus you don't get the levy equalization dollars that come out to your school district, and I could hardly stand to watch it. So when I went to the legislature, I said simple majority, to me, equates to democracy, and just because there's an initiative that people want more, that my core value is that I understand that a 60% majority rule actually empowers the 40% minority, and I don't believe that is democratic. I think 50% plus one is what we all have to live with. But if we pass an initiative, I live by whatever the initiative says, that's what we're going to do. And that's the way it is for 2 years. So I've been focused on education for a long time. I will remain focused on it. I've learned a lot about it at the local level. I've learned a lot about it at the federal level, and it all does come together at the state level. In these next few years, we've got great plans to really fully fund our public schools, to increase funding for national board certification, to really run our schools in a different way, and I hope to be there to help us move through these transitions and to full funding. But I don't want to forget about the whole community. I think it's important that whatever decisions I make really look at having safe and affordable housing for everybody, having access to health care for everybody, strong schools, early childhood support for families with young children, as well as good training so people have the skills and knowledge to get the jobs they need. Thank you very much.
Thank you. With that, we'll take a 5-minute break. After the break, County Commissioner candidates for District 1, Denny Hamilton and Randy Netherland, will join us up at the podium.